Respected Chairperson, all the esteemed delegates of ICHJP 2021, I extend my warm welcome to all the esteemed speakers, delegates, community people, and my dear students. Today's topic of my discussion is definition, structure, function, and cognitive theories of consciousness. First of all, I would like to say about the theme of ICHJP 2021. Why we have chosen this theme. At present, in the field of science, there are so many scientists who are focusing on the study of consciousness. Hundreds of papers are being presented just on consciousness. The scientists are trying to understand consciousness from neurological point of view, from physiological point of view, from psychological point of view. And they are coming to this conclusion that consciousness is a neural function. It is a function of brain. As I have said, many renowned scientists, they come to the conclusion that every phenomena in the universe cannot be explained just by physical processes involving matter, and thus there is a dire need to think beyond matter. This list of scientists includes several Nobel laureates, and we quote a few of them here to strengthen the point. Schrödinger, physics Nobel laureate, writes, mind has erected the objective outside world of the natural philosopher out of its own stuff. The second Nobel laureate, scientist Winger, remarks, we are not machine. If man were a machine, then it should be possible to describe him in terms of atoms and molecules. And I don't think that is possible. Winger also mentions that consciousness is a non-physical entity. Josephson writes, thus Bohm views quantum mechanics as providing an indication that there is unobserved order in nature. This now connects back to what I was saying much earlier. That is, that if we want to put God into science, then we have to say there is an intelligence behind the scenes, which is creating order, or at least leaving things less ordered than they would have been without the intelligence being present. George Ward writes, each of us has a share in Brahman, the Atman, the essential stuff, ageless, imperishable. Tattvamasi, thou art that is the stuff of the universe. Last but not the least, Albert Einstein says, I believe in Spinoza's God. These are the scientists, and there are several other Nobel laureates. According to the list of Timoyer Dimitrov, there are almost 27 Nobel laureates who believe in the existence of some entity beyond the matter and energy covered in physics. This shows that material science alone is not enough. And there are indications regarding the possibility of some real stuff which is known as soul or consciousness. Though it is not yet detected by any scientific instruments, yet scientists are thinking that beyond matter there should be some entity which can be said as consciousness or soul. And they are trying to understand it. At present, the scientists Roger Penrose, Hammerhoff, Nepen Close, whom we have got in this conference for discussion on consciousness, and others have started working on consciousness model of the universe. Before they come to any conclusion, they must know that what consciousness is in philosophical point of view. And that's why I have chosen, or we have chosen this theme for this conference, because it is very timely theme, very current theme, and very needed theme. What is consciousness? When we go into study of Jainism, we find that Jainism has focused on soul from its very beginning. It has gone very deep, very analytical, very minute, and very wider study of soul and consciousness. There is a lot of literature which is mainly focused on the understanding of soul and consciousness. So it is the time we have to present what has been thought from centuries in the field of Jainism about consciousness. In the Jain literature, there are three main terms which indicate about the nature, function, structure of consciousness. The first term, which is well known and very much in use at present, is Chaitanya. Second is Upayoga, cognitive activity. And the third one is Jnana, cognition. These terms are regarded as identical and interchangeable terms, despite of having some differences among them. The defining characteristic of soul is consciousness. It is only the fundamental quality or characteristic which distinguishes soul from all other non-soul or non-living elements. This is what is said in Bhagavati Sutra. It is an inalienable characteristic of Jiva. However undeveloped it may be, karmic matter wears the light of consciousness in mundane state, but it doesn't mean that consciousness is absent in lower spaces. There are three main karmas, Jnanavarni, Darshanavani, and Mohani, that is knowledge covering, intuition covering, and deluding karmas, which are main cause of covering or deluding our power of consciousness. However much the karmic matter may obscure the consciousness of a soul, it cannot obliterate it altogether or make it absolutely inoperative. This is the reason why the consciousness is found even in the Nigor, which is the smallest living being or microbe. And through progressive development, reaches its maximum in the omniscience of the perfect soul. Now we would see that scientists are relating consciousness to brain's function, neural function. But so far as Jainism is concerned, it says that consciousness is the fundamental characteristic or power of soul only. It is never found in any material entity. Jainism has discussed consciousness very extensively and profoundly through its various different theories, epistemological theories, logical theories, psychological theories, biological theories, and parapsychological theories, along with spiritual theories. According to it, consciousness is the defining characteristic of soul. Soul is only the source or seat of consciousness among all the five fundamental realities of the universe. Senses, mind, and intellect are working because of the power of soul. Each soul is endowed with infinite consciousness, as said in the scripture Nandi Sutra. It is said that Sabva Jivanam Piya Nam Akharsa Anantamo Bhago Nichuhariyo Jai Purso Vi Avaricha Tenam Jivo Ajivatam Pavicha. The infinite part of the infinite consciousness is always open in all the living beings. If that is also covered, then there would have not been any difference between the living being and the non-living things. So, consciousness is only the defining characteristic of soul. It cannot be found in any other elements than soul. Soul and consciousness are in fact inseparable phenomena. Consciousness without soul and soul without consciousness are impossible. Due to this inseparable relationship, sometimes soul and consciousness are taken in one sense or as interchangeable terms, and therefore it is said that consciousness is soul and soul is consciousness. The same we can find in the words of Tirthankar Mahavir, who was the 24th Tirthankar of Jain tradition. In Acharang he speaks, Je aya se vinnaya, je vinnaya se aya, Jain Vijanati se aya. It means one who knows is soul and one who is soul knows. By which one knows is soul. So here we can see that knowledge and consciousness and soul are not separate phenomena. They are one and the same. They define each other. And the process of knowledge is also not separate from the self. And that's why it is said that Jaina Vijanati Seyara, by which one knows is soul. So it is the power of soul through which we can know anything or everything. So they are one in one sense. They are separate in the sense that one is attribute and other one is the substratum or substance in which that attribute is found. So they have quality, substance relation with each other. But so far the existence of the soul and consciousness is concerned, it is one and not separate. Now we would see that what are the levels of consciousness. There are two main levels of consciousness. One is sensory, other one is extrasensory. The sensory level can be said as mediate level, in which soul cannot know things directly, but through brain, through mind, or intellect, or sense organs. It can know whatever is being presented before it. It is a kind of indirect knowledge because it is in this level, consciousness is working through brain, mind, and intellect or sense organs, but not directly. In this particular level, we find two types of knowledge, Mati-gyan, which is known as perceptual cognition, and the second one is Shruta-gyan, which is articulate knowledge. Under the extrasensory perception, we find three types of knowledge, Avadhi-gyan, Manaparya-gyan, and Keval-gyan. We will go into detail of each one So right now, we need not to take much more time here. Based on these two levels of consciousness, there is rigorous discussion on various types of cognitions emerging out of these two levels. And there are so many scriptures, philosophical texts, which are focused especially on the discussion of these functions of consciousness or levels of consciousness. Now, there are two main functions of consciousness. One is perception, which is called technically known as darshan, and second one is knowledge, that is jnana. In the scriptures, it is known as anakar upayog and sakar upayog. So Pragyapana Sutra, Bhagavati Sutra, all discuss about these two types of functions of consciousness. There are so many theories regarding the functions of consciousness in Jainism. One which is very often discussed in the field of epistemology or knowledge, that is called Upayoga. So Upayog doesn't mean something usable, but or something which can be used. But Upayog here means consciousness or operative consciousness. So it is a kind of general theory of cognition in which 12 types of knowledge and perceptions are discussed. All the 12 types of knowledge are discussed under three categories. One is right knowledge, other one is perverted knowledge, and third one is perception. Right knowledge is again divided into 5 categories: perceptual cognition, articulate knowledge, clairvoyance, mind reading, and omniscience. Perverted knowledge are again of 3 types: perceptual cognition, articulate knowledge, and clairvoyance. And perception is known as sensation, and it is of 4 types: visual perception, non-visual perception, clairvoyant, and omniperception. Now we would see that these all 12 types of knowledge are understood under the theory of Upayoga, which is a general theory of cognition. But there is one special theory of cognition also, which has been mentioned in the scripture Pragyapana Sutra. And this special theory of cognition is known as Paschata theory. In this theory, we find 10 types of cognitions or 10 types of cognitive theories, which are already included in the theory of Upayoga. The difference here is only this, that Paschata theory includes all those knowledges only in it when they are able to see not only the present things, but whatever was in the past and future, and in their range, come in their range, they are accepted in this particular theory of Paschata. So Paschata theory and the Upayog theory are very close, though in Upayog theory also one can know the things of past and future, but it is not necessary. But so far as theory of Paschata is concerned, it is necessary that each and every knowledge must have capacity to know all the 3 periods or things of all the 3 periods. There are certain knowledges which are found in every living being, whether it is the smallest micro virus or a human being or an omniscient. So these minimum knowledge theory is known as Sangya. it can be said as instinctive knowledge or innate tendencies or inner urges. And it is found in smallest living beings also. Though the omniscient, after getting omniscience, they don't need such kind of knowledge separately, but if they are also feeling hunger, at least, then it is a kind of ahar sangya which they are also having. So instinct, these are 10 types of instincts in psychology. The first instinct is known as ahar sangya. It means the feeling or sensation of hunger. Bhai sangya means the feeling of fear. Maithun sangya means the feeling of sex. Parigrah sangya means the feeling of possession or the tendency of possession. Krodh sangya means the emotion of anger. Man, emotion of ego. Maya, emotion of deceit. Lobh, emotion of greed. Lok sangya, specific or learned tendency, or ok sangya, general and natural tendency. So we see here that the starting 8 sangyas are due to Vedani, rising of Vedani karma or Mohani karma. But last 2 sangyas show the independent function of our consciousness. In these 2 functions, we don't need even the sense organs or any other physical instruments to know the things, but each and every living being has this minimum knowledge, and that knowledge is a kind of independent function of consciousness. Now we are coming to the 5 types of main right knowledge, in which first one is called Mati Gyan, and in English we can understand as perceptual cognition. In this particular knowledge, we know things through sense and mind and reasoning. And in this knowledge, we find that all the 5 senses can know some or other objects, and our mind can be connected with all the 5 senses, and it can also think independently about any reality. So all the 5 senses and mind come under this perceptual cognition theory. They are the means of our knowledge, perceptive knowledge, and they are divided into 2 categories. One is called Shudh Nishrit, that is quasi linguistic, and other one is called Ashudh Nishrit, that is non-linguistic. So in quasi linguistic Shudh Nishrit Mati Gyan, we again find 4 stages. In the first stage, we just sense that there is some object, but that is not enough to know what this object is. For that, we need some specific inquiry about the object of our sense. And for that, we start speculating about the object, that whether it is table or whether it is chair. Then we come to the judgment, decision, that it must be table and not chair, because whatever we are finding as its characteristics, they all are related to the object, like table and not the chair. And lastly, we decide, and it becomes fixed in our mind that this kind of characteristics always indicate to the object which is known as table. So this is retention. So these are the 4 stages of basic linguistic knowledge which happens or occurs at the level of perceptual cognition or sense organs. Apart from this quasi-linguistic knowledge, there is another perceptual knowledge, which is known as non-linguistic. In this particular knowledge, there are 4 types of intellects. The first intellect is called intellect of instantaneous comprehension. In this, no one doesn't know anything about the object before. All of a sudden, the object comes before him, and he becomes able to say something which is accurate and applicable or corresponding to the object. So that is called instantaneous comprehension. The second is intellect born of faithful service. When somebody has humility, very much respect towards his teacher or tutor, the teacher or tutor can teach a little bit things, but he can understand more what the teacher has said. So this is the second intellect which we get after learning something from teachers. And because of our humility, politeness, humbleness, we get some extra knowledge by ourselves. Third is intellect developed by practical experience, and that is acquired always after practicing in particular field. Suppose if somebody wants to be doctor, he has to work in during his residency period in some hospitals and has to get knowledge about the things of his future career. So that comes by working in particular field. Next is intellect of mature experience. As time passes, we get maturity of mind and we become more clear about the things which we have understood in our childhood when our mind was not mature enough. So in this way, we have these 4 types of intellects which come under this non-linguistic knowledge. Why they are non-linguistic? Because the objects which we are learning or the knowledge we are getting by these 4 types of intellect, they are not taught by any teacher or in any institutions. They are acquired by humility, by practicing in particular field or with maturity of mind. Including these all different types of knowledge, we find that there are 341 types of perceptual cognition. In Tattvartha Sutra, which is the very famous text, philosophical text of Jainism, Acharya Maswati has talked of 12 types of cognitive abilities. And if we relate to all these different types of cognitive knowledge, then we can get 341 types of cognitive perceptual cognitions. Memory, recognition, reasoning, apprehension, inference, analogy, implication, probability, negation, all these come under perceptual cognition. So this is a brief outline about the perceptual cognition. But in the scriptures, it is also said that our sense organs can know the things which are presented before them, but they have extra power to know the things which are at distance. For example, eyes has maximum capacity to know the things which are a distance of 1 lake yojan. Ears can listen to the words which are coming from the distance of 12 yojan. Nose, tongue, and skin can know objects from the distance of 9 yojan. But if the smell is coming indirectly from the distance 400 and 500 yojans, then also nose can know it. This has been indicated in the scripture Prakyapana sutra, and we can see that how much power only the senses have to know the external world or things. Second knowledge is articulate knowledge. There are 14 types of articulate knowledge in which we learn about the things by reading some text or listening to some lectures or by looking at some symbols or by understanding some symbols or indications. And those 14 types of knowledge are linguistic symbols. Linguistic symbols means the knowledge which we are getting through some particular language in which there are some alphabets. We first know the alphabets, then we know how the words are made out of these some alphabets and what is the meaning of those words. So after reflecting on the meaning of the words, we get such kind of knowledge. The second is rational means. The knowledge which is being received, acquired by a rational being. Though everybody can know something, but a rational mind thinks or understands in a better way than what irrational mind or without mind living beings understand. Third is authentic knowledge. There are certain knowledge which are very authentic, and if we have the knowledge of those things and the exact sense in which it was given or spoken, then we have authentic knowledge. If we don't distort any fact or figure which has been spoken by some speaker or some teacher or some guru or mentor, then it can be said as authentic knowledge. That which has a beginning. The fourth category says that there are certain things which have been written down in a particular time and which that knowledge has come at some point of time and before it was not there. That which is with an end. There are certain knowledge which will be outdated, and that knowledge comes under this fifth category. Scriptures having analogical passages. There are certain scriptures in which we will find that the same thing is being repeated again and again with some changes. So that kind of text or scriptures, they come under this kind of sixth category of knowledge. Seventh category related to the inner corpus of the Jain scriptures. Jain scriptures have been divided into two categories. One is inner corpus and the second one is the outer corpus. In the inner corpus, we find 12 types of texts or scriptures or canons which have been spoken directly by Tirthankars and composed by the chief disciples, Gandharas. So that knowledge which is contained especially in those scriptures come under this particular seventh category. In the eighth category, we find non-linguistic knowledge. The non-linguistic knowledge means the knowledge we are getting through some sounds which has no alphabets. For example, the birds speak and we understand what they want to say. So in their language, there is no alphabets, even though we understand the indications being given by the birds or the animals. So this is called non-linguistic. The next is irrational beings, the knowledge of irrational beings. So I have already said that the rational being understands things better than what the irrational beings understand. So that their knowledge comes under irrational beings. Spurious knowledge is in this particular category. What we are knowing might be unauthentic, not real facts. It may be humorous, it may be wrong, it may be perverted. So this kind of knowledge comes in this category, that which is without a beginning. So there are certain knowledge which has no beginning. In the text of Pramana Mimamsa, at one place, Acharya Hemchandra says that there are certain knowledge which have been going on from the time immemorial and will continue in the next remote future. They will never come to end. So there are certain knowledge which are being transmitted from one generation to another endlessly. That which is without an end. Similarly, there is no end of such kind of knowledges. Scriptures having no analogical passages. There are certain texts which are written down in a very analytical manner, and you will not find any kind of repetition in them. So those scriptures come under this particular category. And the fourth one is related to outer corpus of the Jain scriptures. As I have already said, that there are two types of corpus. So the outer corpus is mainly composed by the learned sages, seers, who had knowledge of 14 purvas or 10 purvas or less than 10 purvas, or they might be having mind reading knowledge or clairvoyance or omniscient. So these people have written down some texts that come under outer corpus. Now, the third knowledge is called avadhiya. It is a clairvoyance. Though clairvoyance, which is being recognized in the field of science, is not superior in comparison to avadhiya. Avadhiyan is much more advanced, much more superior, very clear, and a kind of extra sensory knowledge. It is the knowledge which is direct to soul. In this particular knowledge, soul directly knows the physical material substances which are at distance or very subtle or obstructed. So this clairvoyance, this type of clairvoyance is of two types. One is bhavpratyay and another is kshapratyay. So bhavpratyay means it is a congenial, immediately caused by Genesis. In the case of the denizens of heaven and hell, it is capable to know in all directions. So this knowledge is especially obtained by the heavenly beings and the hellish beings due to taking birth in heaven and hell. So this is bhavas pratyay. Secondly, kshaprashan pratyay. It means the knowledge which is being acquired due to the inner purity after undergoing some spiritual practices. Then it is called kshaprashan pratyay. It is occasional and due to the destruction comes separation of the relevant karmas in the case of humans and subhumans. It can know only in one direction or sometimes in more than one directions. There are two reasons for destruction come separation. One is prashasta adhyavasana. It means the purity of inner states of consciousness or emotions and thoughts. And other one is vishuddha charitra, that is purity of conduct. So if our conduct is good, we can get such kind of knowledge in us. Now, this clairvoyance is again of many types, depending on the inner purity of the aspirant. The clairvoyance obtained due to the spiritual purification is again of various types, depending the various levels of inner purity. According to the scriptures, Tatmartha Sutra and Pratyapana Sutra, Rajbharti, Shatkhandagam, there are 8 types of clairvoyance. Anugami, Ananugami, Vardhaman, Yaman, Pratipati, Apratipati, Avasthit, Anavasthit. And again, it can be divided into 3 categories: Antagat, Madhyagat, especially in 2 categories. And Antagat is again of 3 types, emerging from front part of our body, emerging out of our left and right sides, and emerging out of a big part. So this is called Antagat clairvoyance. In Madhyagat clairvoyance, we find that knowledge is coming out of all different parts of our body. So this is called Madhyagat. And again, we will see that Anugami means the knowledge which follows the knower. It means this knowledge can be obtained by some aspirant remaining at one particular place. But as he goes out of that place, the knowledge also goes with him. It means the knowledge continues with him. So that kind of knowledge is again of 3 types. One is Kshetranupurvi, second is Bhavanupurvi, and third one is Kshetra Bhavanupurvi. It shows that knowledge transfers not only from one place to another place when aspirant goes in his one lifetime, but if he goes from one birth to another, then also this knowledge can continue with him, or in both the cases. Now we would see that Avadhiyan is again of many different types, in which we find new other 5 types. One is Deshavadhi, and other one is Paramavadhi, Sarvavadhi, Ekshatra, and Ekshatra. And it shows that knowledge has power to know the things from very distance. And that distance also depends on the level of purity. There may be some aspirant who can know only whatever is found in the universe, but other aspirant can know the things which are beyond the universe. And third one can have the knowledge which may perceive the things in many, many universes. So though according to Jainism, there is only one universe, and this kind of example for this kind of aspirant is just to understand the capacity of knowing ability of the knowledge which he is having. But it doesn't mean that he will know many, many universes, because there is no many universe than one. Then Ekshatra and Anekshatra, it means one can know the knowledge in the area, or can know only from the one part of his body and not from all the different parts. But Anekshatra Avadhiyan or clairvoyance can work from many different parts of our body. So we can see that someone has only one chakra which is awakened, and someone may have all the 7 chakras which are awakened, and knowledge can work through all the different chakras. So in this way, we can see that clairvoyance has so many different types depending on the level of purity of the aspirants. Now the 4th knowledge is called Manaparyogya, that is mind reading knowledge, and mind reading is the revealer of thought waves or mental images. It is again of 2 types. One is Riju. Riju means simple, Vipul means complex. So clairvoyance and mind reading both are extrasensory perceptions, and they are also discussed in many other Indian traditions like Nyaya, Vaiseshik Yoga, and Buddhist philosophy, such as Yoga Pratyaksha and Parchitta Bodha. And also they have been discussed in parapsychology, but the systematic and detailed discussion about them, which we find in Jainism or in Jain literature, is not available in any other traditions or branch of knowledge. The last knowledge, which is called Keval Gyan, omniscience. This knowledge is all-knowing knowledge. It is known as perfect knowledge or divine knowledge or omniscience or eternal knowledge. So that which cognizes directly all the substances with all their modes is omniscience, pure and perfect knowledge. It is of two types, Bhavastha Keval Gyan and Siddha Keval Gyan. So Bhavastha Keval Gyan means omniscience in embodied state. Till the enlightened people liberate, they have this knowledge, and that knowledge is known as Bhavastha Keval Gyan because it is found in their physical form or in the what we say till they are in the world in physical body. But as soon as they get liberated from that body, they continue this knowledge, but that knowledge comes under the second category, that is Siddha Keval Gyan. In this state, they have no body, no physical senses or any other organs, but pure soul. In this state, the knowledge is also all-knowing, and it is known as Siddha Keval Gyan. So we find this knowledge after undergoing a hard and very rigorous spiritual practices, but it is the nature of soul. It is the innate nature of our own soul. It is something permanent all the time in our soul, but covered by karmas, especially the Jnanavarnikal and the Darshanavarnikal. And that's why we are not able to realize that we have infinite power of knowledge and perception. We can know anything or everything without making any effort. But till we realize our own inner nature or inner potentials, we have to be dependent on other sources or external sources for getting knowledge of anything. Einstein has rightly said that the intuitive mind is sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So this is our situation. This is our state at present, that we have forgotten what we are really or what kind of knowledge power we are having. We are totally dependent on the external devices for getting knowledge about anything and not using our own potentials or developing or paying attention to that. So for that, we need some practice of meditation and also some ethical rigorous rules and regulations to discipline our life, our mind, and our senses. Now we would see that this omniscience is identified or recognized or explained through various different terms. And by learning those terms, we can understand the glory of this knowledge, the immense capacity of this knowledge, or the nature of this knowledge. So Acharya Janabhadramani Kshamashavan has explained the word, the term Kevala Gyan, and especially Kevala, what we mean by Kevala. So he says that Kevala means one, omniscience is independent of perceptual cognition and articulate knowledge or any other knowledge. It is the fullest development of consciousness, inherited in soul and capable to know directly all material and non-material objects. After its emergence, there is no need to have any other knowledge. Second is Shuddha. Keval means Shuddha. It is completely pure, having no cover. Third, Keval means Sakal. It is undivided and complete in itself. Due to covering, knowledge is incomplete. Having destroyed knowledge covering karmas, by nature, it is complete. Then Asadhara. It is distinct from all other knowledges. And the last one is Anant. It is infinite. Since there are infinite number of realities in the world, it can know all realities. According to the commentator Maldhari Hemchandra, since it does not end after awakening and therefore it is infinite. So these are different explanations of the term Keval, and it shows that what kind of nature omniscience has. Now we come to the function of omniscience. There are three views in regard to the function of the omniscience, omniperception, and omniscience. The first view is of Janbhadra Ganeshanashraman, who was a very well-known philosopher saint of 7th century. Sometimes he is said of 5th century. He says about the sequential function of these two omniscient knowledges. According to him, these two knowledges work one after another and not together. The second theory, which has been known as integrated function theory, and which has been given by Acharya Siddhasen, who was also a very great philosopher, sage of 6th century. He says that these two are not separate. They are one and the same. The third Acharya Mallavadi, who comes in 11th century, and he talks about simultaneous function. He says that after this total destruction of knowledge covering and intuition covering and diluting karmas, these two knowledge work together and not one after another. Now we come to the structure of consciousness. So far as the structure of consciousness is concerned, we find that in the pure state of soul, each and every cell, or we can say unit of soul, is having consciousness. Like the sun, each part of sun is giving light. Similarly, each part of the pure soul gives knowledge. So it is imbibed by knowledge, or it is inheriting knowledge in itself or consciousness in itself. So the structure of consciousness in pure state is the structure of the pure soul, whatever structure it has after giving up body. Second is that the sensory, so far as the Mati Gyan is concerned, or sensory perceptual cognition is concerned, since it is acquired through 5 senses, and all the 5 senses internally are structured in this form. In scriptures, it is said that the eyes are like the cereals of masood. The nose looks like the fruit of mukta. The touch looks like the kurpa, which is one of the instrument in kitchen for cooking food. The skin looks very different depending on the body structure of different living beings. So in this way, we find that all different senses have different structure internally, and consciousness works through that structure. So the structure of consciousness at perceptual cognition or in perceptual cognition depends on the structure of the sensory organs. The structure of clairvoyance is very amazing. In Jain scriptures and especially in Shatkhandagam, we find that whenever this extrasensory perception occurs or is acquired by some aspirant, he finds some special shapes in his body, marks in his body, like the shank, like the girgit, like the other 8 types of auspicious symbols, Ashtamangal, which we discuss in Jainism. So these all are different structures out of which the extrasensory perception, which is known as clairvoyance, works. In Hindu literature, we find the concept of chakras. So through chakras, also this kind of knowledge works. So when chakras awaken, we get such kind of knowledge in us. So these are different structures which have been mentioned. And in Shatkhandagam, especially, we can see that when somebody has clairvoyance, what kind of chakras on what kind of signs or shapes or marks appear in his body, in which part. In mind reading knowledge, we find that our consciousness works directly to detect whatever is going on in the mind of others. So this is the structure of mind reading knowledge. And in omniscience, we have already discussed in pure state what happens if it is in physical form. It means when omniscient is a human being or is in a human body, automatically his soul would be like the body structure, and therefore the structure of omniscience would be according to that structure. But in pure state, it would be according to the structure of pure state of our soul. Now we would see that in Jainism, it is said that all these knowledges have minimum and maximum capacity of knowing of their objects. And that capacity may varies person to person depending on their purity of consciousness. So, for example, perceptual cognition, it can know indirectly all the objects, but not all the modes or attributes of the objects. While articulate knowledge, it can know all the objects and all the modes, but through textual study and not directly. Clairvoyance, it can know directly minimum, infinite, and maximum all the material entities of the universe. Mind reading knowledge, the simple mind reading knowledge can know directly infinite thoughts, and complex mind reading can know them with more quantity and clarity. Omniscience, it has direct access to all the material and non-material objects with their all the modes. So we can see that all these knowledge have different capacity to know minimum and maximum limit of their objects. So far as the space, this is the discussion which or depending on the object, the limit of object, but there is also the limit of space of each of knowledge. For example, the perceptual cognition has capacity to know the things which are found anywhere or everywhere, but indirectly through senses or mind only. And but it is not necessary that they can know the things which are with all their moods. The articulate knowledge can know the things indirectly through scriptures or through articulate knowledge, but language through language or indications or symbols, but of course it is also indirect. Clairvoyance can know the things minimum in minimum up to innumerable part of a finger, and maximum in innumerable parts of transcosmos, which are equivalent to cosmos. The mind reading knowledge has again capacity to know the things of mind of the people who are living in human sphere, and in maximum limit it can know the things of those human beings or living beings who have mind in that particular sphere, but with more clarity and with more detail. Omniscience, of course, it can know anything and everything in any space. Similarly, time duration, perceptual cognition can know the things of all times. Articulate knowledge can also know the things of all times, but we know that both are the knowledges are indirect and not direct. Clairvoyance, mind reading, and omniscience, they can know the things of all the three times, but they have also certain types of limitations, but omniscience has no limitation. And now the last one is the modes. How many modes or attributes these knowledge can know? So perceptual cognition, as we have already discussed, that it can know some of the modes and not all the modes of anything. Similarly, articulate knowledge, it can know all the modes, but through textual study. Clairvoyance can know the modes of the objects which are material and not material. And mind reading knowledge can know the modes of mind only and not any other things. Omniscience can know all the modes of all the times. So in this way, we find that knowledge, all the five types of knowledge have very minimum and maximum limit, which have also been discussed in Jain scriptures. Now there are three types of knowledge, which are known knowledge or permitted knowledge. Though we are knowing the things, but we are knowing wrongly. So we can sometimes we see the things with our own eyes, but when we come to know that what we have known, that was wrong because we have seen something different what was present actually. So this type of knowledge happens with us, that sometimes we know things with our own eyes, but we know what was not present there. Scriptural knowledge is also may also be wrong. If we are learning things from the text which are not authentic, then automatic we will know something which is not right or authentic or correct. And sometimes whatever is written, we may read some we may read mistaken by mistake. We can read the same thing wrongly, and the clairvoyance can be also wrong sometimes due to perversion of our attitude. Now we would see that there are certain knowledge which are known as mystical knowledge or extraordinary powers, and they can be obtained by any person after certain practice. And these knowledge are known as Bij Buddhi, Kost Buddhi, Padanusari, to be Pratik Buddha, to be Swayam Buddha, to be Buddha Bodhi, to have the knowledge of 10 Purvas, to have the knowledge of 14 Purvas, to have the knowledge of 8 types of astrology, to have knowledge of 8 types of mystical powers, Sambhinna Shrotopalabdhi, in which we can know, we can smell from the other parts of our body than nose, or we can see the things through some other parts of our body than our eyes. So that is called a Sambhinna Shrotopalabdhi. To have knowledge of Avadhan means extraordinary memory power. These types of knowledge can be obtained by a common person or any person who is who makes some effort to get these kind of knowledges. So we have seen that in Jainism, consciousness has been discussed widely, minutely, and also from very, very different angles. I have not discussed all those things which are very important from the point of view of psychology or parapsychology, but I have taken just the theories of consciousness, how we are knowing, and at which level what we can know, and what is the minimum and maximum capacity of knowing or intuiting. So that I have discussed, and this is the theories which are known as cognitive theories or epistemological theories, and that show that how consciousness has immense capacity to know the things without any external means sometimes. So this is the main purpose of my discussion of consciousness, that how science can think of all these cognitive theories and can understand the methods of acquiring these knowledge, especially the spiritual methods to get these extrasensory knowledge that can help them a lot to understand some phenomena of the universe which are beyond the senses, which are beyond the mind, which are beyond the intellect. So with these few words, I would conclude my talk with thanks to the chairperson, to the listeners, to the audience who have paid attention to listen to these theories of cognition from Jain perspective. Thank you very much for listening to me.